Alright, hey guys, this is Mr. Kraus here, and I'm going to kind of give you the 101 on soldering, alright? So the first thing you should know is the tools we will be working with. So, first thing we got right here, I have a spool of solder, alright? So solder is what we use to join two metals together. It's made up of lead and tin. 60% tin and 40% lead, but this is what we melt, and it then once we take the heat off of it, it hardens again, and it will join the two different types of metal together. It does have lead in it, and I'm sure you guys have heard of lead poisoning before, so we're going to want to be careful and make sure whenever we're done using it, especially if you have a lunch right after this, that you're washing your hands, because that is not healthy to put anything on your hands that you're eating and then into your mouth. So we got that. Next up we have our soldering irons. Alright, so our soldering irons is obviously what we're going to use to do all the soldering. We have two different types that we're going to use in this class, and by what I mean by that is there's two different tips. So this one right here, I know it's out of focus, but it has a flat tip. Let me get the other one. And now the one over here, you can see on the right is a pointed tip. So we have these two different types. This one right here is what we're going to use to solder all our different components in. And this one is the one that we're going to use to tin our board, which I'll explain to you shortly. But each one of our soldering irons comes with a little stand, and it just slides right in here, and that's where you're going to let it rest whenever you're not using it. I don't want to see you letting it rest on the table like this, or anywhere on any other thing where it could burn something or get pushed around and hit someone, and they'll end up getting burned. It's designed to go right in here. That way we don't have to worry about it. It's in its safe place. If you look below the stand, you should have a wet sponge. You'll use that every time to clean your different, every time you're going to use it to clean to get off the excess solder. You can hear it maybe a little bit, it sizzles a little bit when you put on it, but it cleans it off really nice. So whenever you're done making a solder joint, you want to make sure you wipe it off on the sponge and stick it in. Some other things that we will need, right here, this is a clamp. So when we are soldering different boards, we want to clamp them into place, because if we don't, and let's say I was trying to solder this, I had some solder in my one hand and this in my other hand, and I'm trying to put something in my board, it's going to slide around a little bit. We don't want it to be sliding on us. So we have these nice handy dandy clamps, and what they allow us to do, we have a crank where we can tighten or loosen to put something in. So if I loosen it up right here, I can tighten it and put that in place. And then below, down here, we have a little clamp that we can loosen or tighten that allows us to change the rotation however we want. So I can put it down at an angle like this, straight up, or rotate it a whole 360 degrees up here. And then once you get the position you want, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, put it all right back where you want it. So these are very useful, kind of gives you, allows you to use both your hands and have this exactly where you want it. So that is what we want. And some other tools. This right here is our solder sucker. What this allows us to do is it allows us, whenever we screw up, we can use this to fix our mistakes. So it involves a spring and a button that releases it, and when you release that button, right down here, you're going to put this next to a soldering joint, and when you push that button, it pulls the air up into here, so it kind of is a suction that allows the air to travel up in here. But if you put it right next to some wet solder, it's also going to pull that right up in it as well. So if you put something where you don't want it, and you have to move it out, just stick this guy right next to the joint that you want to remove, put the soldering iron on it, make it really hot, push the button, and it should pull all that solder right out with it. So that's very useful for whenever you're making mistakes. And then obviously we just have our two different types of pliers. The needle nose pliers, which are good for whenever you want to grab something. It's got its fine point. It allows you to be able to have a little bit more control than your fat fingers. You can get in and grab stuff a little bit more precisely. And then we have the diagonal cutters whenever you want to trim any of your leads or cut any wires. It allows you to do that. So we have the diagonal cutters and the needle nose pliers. So they each have different colored grips in the back, so not all of them are going to be black or orange. You just make sure you know to be able to tell them that needle nose pliers are long, come down to a fine point, and the diagonal have a sharp edge that you can see that is used for cutting. Alright, so those are the main tools that you're going to need to use when you are soldering.